Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing the two-part DC Comics Comico crossover, Batman Grendel, Grendel Batman. The first volume being titled Devil's Riddle, and the second volume being titled Devil's Masque, respectively. Both written and illustrated by Matt Wagner, with colors by Jeff Matt, and letters by Ken Bruzenak, published in 1993. To start, let me say that I was completely unfamiliar with the character of Grendel going into these volumes, so it was somewhat surprising to me to find him being, for all intents and purposes, a relatively ruthless and cunning villain, extorting, blackmailing, kidnapping, and even murdering in Volume 1 alone. Largely as Hunter Rose, Grendel's daytime alter ego, seemingly consumed with the delivery of an Egyptian art piece, the head of a sphinx, to Gotham City. And by night, as Grendel, has he gone to great lengths to twist and turn to his bidding two women, them being Rachel King and Hilly Farrington, respectively, in the hopes of securing the delivery time for the much-sought-after Sphinx piece. Grendel is hardly an amateur, setting up his antics, strong-arming Rachel's art house boss to look like it's the work of the Riddler, to ensure that Rachel is the only one her boss appoints to oversee the delivery. Whereas her roommate Hilly is he whining and dining in his daytime writer-artist guise in the hopes of insinuating out of her any information her roommate may have on the piece as well. So you could say he's got all of his bases effectively covered. Most assuredly, though, since all of this is taking place in Gotham City and Wayne Enterprises is heading up the security surrounding the piece, it's little time before Batman gets wind of some strange doings going on. Firstly, concerning Commissioner Gordon's suspicion that Edward Nygma, the Riddler, is back in town, and secondly, by day, his meeting with Hunter Rose and Rachel King at both his club and the security's meeting planning the Sphinx's arrival. Bruce is ultimately unconvinced that this is the work of the Riddler and is led on a merry chase which has he and Grendel spiraling on opposite ends of the proverbial dance floor that is Gotham City. And he's doing it largely alone, as he sent Alfred off on a vacation back to England. All the while does Hunter start ramping things up to a fever pitch by using some well-laid secrets both of the women have to do with children that they've lost in their pasts. With Rachel, it was a story of abortion at an early age. With Hilly, it was a story of her giving up her child for adoption. And so somehow, being very well connected, does Grendel instigate the kidnapping of Hilly's biological daughter in an attempt to force her to uncover her roommate's knowledge of the Sphinx's delivery time. The pressure is on as Batman begins to close in, which coincides with the closing of Volume 1, which sees Rachel's boss murdered and the unfolding of two ill-timed phone meetings, set hopefully to instigate the appearance of the villain behind the scheme, but which leads Grendel into a confrontation with Jim Gordon and the Gotham PD instead, and Batman to meet the business end of a soon after his arrival caved-in warehouse. As Volume 2 opens, we find Batman has spirited underneath the sturdy Batmobile, which for all intents and purposes has saved his life, and Grendel all but slaughters the dozen or so cops thinking they've got him cornered before making off into the night once again. As has been his motif all along, Grendel continues to leave Riddler-esque calling cards to dog Batman and Gordon every step of the way, even now after having been seen by both of them. Yet, while each riddle is a poor excuse for Enigma's usual repartee, they all continue to carry with them an actual clue, a hint at what's really going on, one of which hinges on the British-Canadian phrase, "Bob's your uncle." Receiving an impromptu call from Alfred, who's soon to be back by the Gotham wayside, Bruce is able to reason out the meaning of the phrase and better lays his mind on the idea that one way or another, Grendel has something he's holding over one of the two ladies, whilst he's using the other to do his dirty work, only he can't be sure which one is which. So, as Bruce, he deigns to take Rachel out to dinner, which unfolds at the same time as Hunter's propositioning Hilly in a similar manner, and both couples end up at the same fancy restaurant. It's here that a slip of the tongue from Rachel, that aforementioned phrase, is uttered and begins the clockwork detection in Bruce's mind of how all of these loose strands must fall into play. He proves to himself that he's on the right track when he is able to track and confront Grendel at the art house the Sphinx is to be displayed in after it's arrived. Both men tumble, with neither gaining the upper hand and each of them taking off again into the night soon after. But Bruce has assured for himself which it is of the two women that are, whether with or without choice, working with Grendel, and soon a final rooftop meeting is set between the women and Grendel, who promises to bring with him Hilly's daughter. Batman is a step ahead enough to show up on the scene as well, and the throwdown soon ensues. One of the women is packing a gun. Grendel doesn't mean to, but he almost causes the death of the child. And all of this is uncovered to have been just a game, to lead the Dark Knight on a merry chase and out into the open for a confrontation of the ages. The wicked are punished, but the evil go free. Batman manages to unmask the Grendel, but finds only another in face paint underneath, one that Hunter resolves the Batman's is merely a mirror to, rather than that of the true adversaries, and the masked stalkers of the night part ways, choosing to move forward rather than letting this event haunt them any further than it already has. Overall, Matt Wagner dishes out an intriguing little tale with this two-part mashup. It's a bit slow to start, as you sometimes find with decent stories, as you need the players to be effectively set up. And there are some issues with the internal monologues of one of the two women, that being Rachel, whose little dialogue bubbles are depicted as torn-off yellow post-it notes, and oftentimes are the tears decapitating of the words, leaving you to have to guess at what it actually says for a few extra and altogether unnecessary seconds. Whereas the Dark Knight's monologues are clear and succinct, almost militarily, as you might expect in some interpretations of him. Grendel's, however, are sometimes annoying, as each of them are presented in what I presume is meant to be Hunter Rose's shorthand, and the lettering is so small that it can be really hard to read in places. But whatever the case, the gist is always gotten across, and by the third act of the first volume, and for the entirety of the second, the momentum is swift and thoroughly engaging. The art, also done by Wagner, is not quite as polished and or crisp as the work on the DC volume I've reviewed previously, Trinity. It carries with it in places a simple yet elegant, almost pulp style, sometimes making the pages look incomplete or purposefully sloppy. And in other places, the scenery and characters are near to over-the-top well done, mostly as it were in the case of Batman and Grendel themselves. The coloring throughout the book is muted for the most part, and it works better in some places than in others, but all in all, it's not a visually uninteresting piece. Would it lead me to perhaps dig into more Grendel stuff at another time, maybe? Well, I'd be lying if I said I was chomping at the bit to after this. It wasn't an astounding piece, but it was decent enough. I'll be rating Batman Grendel, Devil's Riddle, and Grendel Batman, Devil's Masque a collective 4 out of 5. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of these two volumes, if you've ever read them, if you think you'll be checking them out, if you haven't, and what some of your recommendations might be if you're more familiar with the Grendel character than I am, as far as what might be good to look for to gain a better perspective on him as a character. Otherwise, that'll be it for me on this one. I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.